Today on Access Daily, Denise Richards is joining us here in studio. She's a contestant on the new season of Special Forces World's Toughest Test.
And Deal or No Deal Island is back. We've got host Joe Manganiello here.
Access Daily starts now.
Thank you. Welcome to Access Daily, everybody. Universal Studios Hollywood. I'm Kit Hoover with Mario Lopez. The Last Showgirl.
Good afternoon. We're coming on the air with breaking news. The Patriots are addressing the media for the first time since firing head coach Jerod Mayo.
Let's listen in to Patriots owner Bob Kraft.
Terrible for Jerod because I put him in an untenable situation. I know that he has all the tools as a head coach to be successful in this league. He just needed more time before taking the job. In the end, I'm a fan of this team first, and now I have to go out and find a coach who can get us back to the playoffs and hopefully championships. We're open for questions.
Robert, just when was the decision made? In your mind, when was it that you felt you needed to let him go?
This whole situation evolved, but I'd say over the last month, I went back and forth. And I don't know, in my life and my business, I make certain decisions. I know when it's right, and it just happened. And it was very hard because the personal relationship I feel for Jerod and the human being he is. And
No, it must be a problem with my FB. I'm just going to
guilty. I put him in that position, but we're moving on.
Hey, Robert. What will happen with, for instance, the personnel department? What decisions will be made with whoever the next coach is, having the latitude to bring in his own players, his own scouting staff, his own coaches?
Yeah, we'll wait till we bring that coach in, and he obviously he's going to have big input on who the players are and who the coaches are. It'll be his decision. So
at this juncture, would it be status quo for everybody on the staff until an individual is found?
Yes. Look, we move fast, and we're going to let him make those decisions.
Robert, I know that you don't make snap decisions, so I was wondering, at what point during the season did you sense something was not right? And if you could expand on that, what caught your attention that something wasn't right?
Well, in the important decisions in my life, I've always said I measure 9 times and cut once. And this was one of those situations. I guess the main thing for me is I felt we regressed. The high point of everything for me was winning in the Cincinnati game. And then in mid-season, I just think we started to regress.
Robert, how significantly has fan reaction to the product on the field and to Jerod specifically played into your decision?
Well, I'm the biggest fan, so I understand. And, you know, since the day we bought this team and I realized what a privilege it was and how lucky we were as a family, that this is the only business we're involved in where I see ourselves, we don't own this team. It's owned by the fans of this region, and we're custodians of a very special asset of the community. And that's why that helps me try to make decisions that if it was just personal, it would be different.
Robert, aside from yourself and Jonathan, who will be involved in the head coaching interviews, and what traits are you looking for?
Well, we'll have Alonzo Highsmith and Elliott will be involved, and we're going to try to understand who can help us best get back to the playoffs.
Robert, does that mean Elliott and his staff are going to continue on, or will the coaching hire also impact your front office?
No, we are looking for people working together, and they will be staying on.
Robert, when you say that the situation was untenable, what about it specifically did you find untenable, and how will that influence how you approach this search?
I don't like losing. I don't like losing the way we lost. And just things were not developing the way we would have liked, and it was time to move on.
Robert, how big of a search do you plan on how big of a coaching search do you plan on conducting?
Well, we want to interview as many people as we can that we think can help us get to that position that we want to be in. So we have put out and requests, and Stacy will be filling you in on that.
Robert, thank you for taking our questions. Appreciate it. Is Mike Vrabel at or near the top of your list? It seems to be the talk.
Before I make a comment like that, I don't know all the people involved, and there are some wonderful people that we've heard about, so I'd rather respond to that after I've seen everyone.
Robert, can you speak a bit more to the timing of this? Did Jerod know before the game?
Where are you?
I'm right over here. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could speak a bit more to the timing of this. Did Jerod know before the game that this would be his last game coaching?
No.
I know this was very difficult for you to sit down with him. How did he take it? How did he respond? Was he shocked by the news?
He was a man. Look, it was one of the more difficult things I've had to do in my life, because I had such affection for him, and I believe in him, and I really do believe he will go on, and as he gets more experience, he'll be successful. It was not easy. He was a gentleman and accepted it that way.
Robert, this is going to be very expensive. Buying out a coaching staff, bringing in on new coaching staff, perhaps it goes to the personnel department. You also have $120 million in cap space this year, the most in the league. Will what you spend on this transition affect anything that you spend on players this offseason?
Yeah, the answer is no. We've always had a situation where we spend to the cap, and if we go over we have never told any coach or limited the spending. The only thing we've said is if you exceed the cap, we like to see it leveled out over 3 years. And, so that we never get way out of hand. But spending to the cap or above the cap is not, we want to win. That's our priority first.
Hi, Robert, back here. How are you? You guys were told this was a multi-year rebuild, that it wasn't going to turn around in 1 year. You said you believe in Jerod, you think he'll be better with more experience, so why not let him get that experience here, knowing going in this was a multi-year process?
Yeah, from my point of view, I just thought we had a rough year last year. It was not 24, 23. And going through 2 years like that, and then seeing where we were this year, and especially the second half of the year, just made me feel we weren't going in the right direction. And I don't want to go through this next year, and we're going to do what we got to do to fix it.
Robert, is there one quality when you go through this search with a new coach that you'll be looking for over everything else? Is there one quality, in your opinion, that will help lead to you getting back to being a contender and playing for championships?
No, it's really a composite. I mean, you need someone who players can relate to and respond to, but they need to have a team around them that has product knowledge, in-game adjustments, knowing what their system is, just a lot of things coming together.
Robert, we saw Jonathan very animated during the Cardinals game on television. How much was he involved in this decision, and how is he going to be involved in this decision about who your next coach will be?
Well, for over 30 years, he's been with me in most decisions I've made in my life, surely business ones that are important. So he will continue to be involved with me.
Hi, Robert. Thank you for taking the time. I was just curious. We know that you addressed the team this morning. And a lot of the players were very on board with Jerod. They really liked him. What was kind of the reaction from the players in terms of this decision?
Well, I didn't get a chance to really interact. Believe it or not, we had some very important outside people coming here today on something unrelated to the Patriots. That's why we scheduled it this day a while back. And I spoke to them about how I felt about Jerod and what I tried to convey here today earlier.
A couple of final questions. Robert, did you have any input with the coaching staff about how to handle the final game of the season with the #1 overall pick at stake?
Did I have?
Did you have any input? Did you talk to the coaching staff about how to handle the game?
No.
Tom Curran, this is the last question.
Hey, Robert. I get #2. The personnel department this past year in free agency didn't really have a banner year, and also in the draft. And Elliott and some of the other individuals there, Matt Groh, have been part of the personnel department for a number of years. What is it that stands out to you about them that they should continue forward in the team building when the roster is not great?
Yeah, I think that the department evolved a lot, and a lot of things were changed. We changed our grading system this year and have done things. Our drafts have not been good for a while, and that's not, if you want to compete long term and be good in this league, you got to have good drafts, because those rookie contracts allow you to go out and get the people you need to surround people. Looks like we lucked out. We maybe have 2 quarterbacks. But I think we'll hopefully see a big improvement this year. Thank you very much. I appreciate you all giving us the time.
You've been listening to Robert Kraft talk about the decision to fire head coach Jerod Mayo. It happened just hours after their win on Sunday. He basically said over the last month, he went back and forth about this decision, that it was a hard personal decision for him because he's known Jerod Mayo for 17 years. And so he said that really did factor in. But again, gave a lot of time. One thing to note, Jerod Mayo did not know he was going to be let go before the final game. Main thing that Robert Kraft said was they won the first game, they get out of the gate, and he said the season just regressed. And that was the process that he couldn't let go of. And that is why Mayo has been let go after 1 year, which, by the way, Glenn, has only happened, I believe, one other time in Patriots head coach history.
Yeah, after a 4-13 record. Robert Kraft did cite inexperience as one of the reasons he thought Jerod Mayo wasn't ready for this job. But of course, the thing that Robert Kraft will have to defend going forward is if he hired someone as a head coach who had never done the job before, and then when firing him, cites his inexperience, those two things are in conflict, at least in my mind.
Without taking it for granted, not for granted, but into effect that he said this will take years to rebuild.
Absolutely.
So clearly, he went in not thinking this was going to be a winning year, but there was something about the regression that must have been much more dramatic or impacted him much more than he thought it would be, especially coming from Jerod Mayo. You would think at least the defense would have gotten stronger in some way, shape, or form with his knowledge of at least that side of the game from his own experience playing linebacker.
Yeah, you raise a good point there, because in the end, there were 2 consecutive seasons where they only got 4 wins. And I can see how that would wear on an owner. But of course, only one of those seasons belonged to Jerod Mayo, a rookie head coach, only 38 years old, which is relatively young,
very young
for a head coach in this league. He had a new coaching staff around him. He did not have great talent. So there was a lot of things working against him as well, along with his inexperience, that got him to the end, a 4-13 record, and then fired as a head coach after just 1 season.
And what the question is, and this will be for our NBC Sports team to really answer here, but was he set up to fail? When you're handed that, when you have limited experience, as you said, Kraft really should answer to the fact that he's the one that allowed those 2 factors to be in play this year. And now it's falling on Jerod Mayo. And we should point out, according to Robert Kraft, the front office remains the same. So
That's
in
right.
terms of everyone behind the scenes, that is going to stay in place. And if you want to, Glenn, you want to go over the names that really have been floated around as possible replacements for Jerod Mayo.
One of them were mentioned in this press conference, and that's Mike Vrabel. He is perhaps the leading candidate to be a head coach someplace in the NFL in this next season.
He's a free agent.
Absolutely. He's a former Patriots linebacker as well. He spent 6 seasons as head coach in Tennessee, and he has already reportedly been interviewed by the New York Jets, for the opening that they have there. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not Robert Kraft pursues Mike Vrabel, but he wouldn't be drawn on that subject at the press conference. He said, hang on a second, I want to see the whole list of candidates that are out there before I say anything about where we might be going next.
I think that was a move of saying, I'm not going to step on the toes of the few people like Elliott Wolf who will be making part of these next decisions. Ben Johnson, who right now is with the Lions as offensive coordinator, seems to be on the list. Brian Flores, defensive coordinator for the Vikings. Liam Cohn, offensive coordinator for the Bucs. But I will say, Glenn, from what I've heard, and the question was asked, Mike Vrabel is the name at the top of the list. However, Kraft would not say that officially.
Right. And so I imagine he's going out now looking to get a head coach who has vast experience, because he is consistently citing inexperience as the reason that they're letting Jerod Mayo go. Let's turn now to NBC Sports Boston's Phil Perry, who was at that press conference. We could hear you, Phil, asking some of the questions. Let's start on this inexperience point, because it was brought up as one of the reasons that Jerod Mayo was not ready to be the head coach of the New England Patriots. But this is an ingredient that Robert Kraft, of course, knew when he hired Jerod Mayo.
Of course he did, Glenn, and there are people around the league who look at this situation from afar and said, you knew you were giving the job to an inexperienced person, and not only that, but you surrounded him with inexperienced people, both in the front office and on the coaching staff. You have to give them a second year. And so there is a lot of surprise league-wide right now that Jerod Mayo is no longer the head coach of the New England Patriots, but to hear Robert Kraft explain it today, he brought up the word regression, and to see the team regress the way it did after reaching the highs that it did in week 1 of the regular season, winning in Cincinnati, which was anticipated to be a playoff team and maybe even a Super Bowl contender, to go in the way that they did, to trend in the direction that they did thereafter, obviously moved eventually Robert Kraft to make the move that he did.
Insight as to why Robert Kraft seems to think that this all falls on Jerod Mayo. As Glenn pointed out, knew he didn't have the experience, knew this team was not strong, but handed it to him anyway, and then says this was one of the hardest decisions he's ever had to make. I can't really put those two pieces together to make sense to me.
Well, I think, JC, when he looks at his team and he considers himself a fan, to react emotionally is part of the job for him as owner. It's interesting to me when I asked him how significantly fan reaction, because it's become a bit of a toxic environment here in New England, let's be honest, between the media coverage and the fan reaction to Jerod Mayo specifically. Remember, there were Fire Mayo chants just a couple of weeks ago here at Gillette Stadium. You have people with bags on their heads showing up to the game yesterday against the Bills. Robert Kraft is openly telling us he's not going to remove that emotional aspect of how he approaches his role as Patriots owner from the decisions that he makes. And I find that really interesting. That's a refreshing bit of honesty. I think if he was as cold and calculating as maybe some other owners in the league, and he looked at Jerod Mayo and said, I know this person is going to be a good head coach in the future, he might have stuck to his guns. So this was a reaction to, in part, fans, but also the performance of the team.
NBC Sports Boston, Phil Perry, thank you so much. Of course, I think we, as long as all the other fans, have a lot more questions to ask, and we will see NBC Sports contribute to us as we head to the 4 p.m. because we have a lot more we want to know, including why the front office is still there.
Right. So we've heard now from Patriots owner Robert Kraft on why he decided to dismiss Jerod Mayo after 1 year as head coach on a 4-13 record. We'll have much more analysis on all of this, as JC said, coming up at 4 o'clock. For JC Monahan, I'm Glenn Jones. We'll see you then.
Call National Floors Direct at 888-400-FLOOR. We bring the store to your door.
Dinosaur Adventure roars into Boston. See a T-Rex,